Lords of the Fallen, a Souls-like which I'm sure a lot of you have played or heard about. I wanted to sit down today and basically make a little review type of video. I'm going to tell you guys a lot of my pros and cons when it comes to this game. First of all, the question that I know a lot of people are going to ask right away: how does it compare to the original Lords of the Fallen? I think this game had a huge task in that its predecessor and where the name comes from is like legitimately one of the worst Souls-likes in my opinion. So they really had an uphill battle to kind of get past that point. Early off the gate, they tried it with the promotion, of course, but it was always there lingering. It wasn't really until the game came out that a lot of people realized like it is nothing like the original. While the story might connect and continue on from the original, the gameplay, which I think is what a lot of people criticized in the original Lords of the Fallen, is completely different and changed up and 10 times better in this game. It's kind of unfair to even compare them at this point. So I won't past this point, and I'll just say that this Lords of the Fallen is miles above the original. So let's go ahead and get that out of the way. So I'm going to go ahead and explain to you guys a lot of my pros and cons when it comes to this, because I actually did write stuff down, so I'm not just going to go right off the head like I usually do. But when it comes to my first playthrough, I had a wonderful time. The game took me roughly around, I want to say, close to 50 hours to complete. It was challenging in all the right ways, with the exception of a few moments or spots, which we'll get into here in a little bit. Fun to explore, but not too crazy that you're getting lost for like an hour. And then we come to my first pro when it comes to this, which was the huge amount of armor and weapons that we actually get in the game. There's some crazy number, like 300 plus weapons, armors, and shields, and bows. So there is a lot of stuff to collect and to experiment with. A lot of the armor sets are legitimately so damn cool looking that it makes the whole fashion side of things, which I really personally like. You know, fashion souls, of course, but fashion lords, fashion fallen, whatever you want to call it, it does it really damn well in this game. From the more typical like armor you see, as in like a knight helmet or a piece of metal plating, then you have some cool ass demonic type of armors. You have some cool umbral armors. I think they did a fantastic job when it comes to the actual art. The art style is another positive in this game, which is just absolutely incredible. The thing they did with the umbral world and the regular world is such a cool idea, because the umbral was probably my favorite part of the game, because it always felt scary. You know, it always felt like you were definitely not supposed to be there. Like, I love how when you die, you basically get another life, and you have a chance to like kill enemies and kill boss and survive and get to the next point where you could revive yourself and become human, because you're gonna instantly want to do that. The world around you is terrifying. You realize that you are straight up an outside visitor in a world that you would not survive in, and you legitimately pretty much won't if you stay there long enough. It's so hostile that after a couple minutes of being in there, you have a giant red symbol on your screen that's basically screaming at you to get out, and you have one of the strongest enemies come out to try to hunt you. Now, of course, you can kill him, and he's kind of an idiot sometimes, and he'll get stuck on a rock or something. You can just straight up cheese him. And I know people were doing that very early on until they patched it, which is another thing that's crazy, by the way. And that's not even including all the incredible puzzles they have that are both mixed in when it comes to the umbral and then the regular world. There's a couple puzzles where you have to be in the human world, use your lamp so you can see some of the umbral steps, go on the little pathway, let go of it so that you fall through, and you actually fall to the bottom area. I love it. Like, they did such a great job when it comes to the mixing of those two, which is something that I have never seen before in a Souls-like. Completely unique to this game. And again, I'll say it 10 more times, but the art in the umbral is just freaking amazing. I really hope that this team wins some type of award when it comes to the actual art direction of this game. I think it easily deserves it. But now we have one of my first cons to the game. Now, of course, I did mention that we have tons of different varieties of weapons and armor. Now, one of my biggest gripes with this game is that while we have like 100 weapons and they're all pretty varied when it comes to the great swords and the looks of them, and the ultra great swords and the straight swords. It's kind of unfortunate that there aren't more like unique weapons. I feel like almost every single weapon in each category does the exact same thing with a different look or a different status effect. There's not really tons of weapons that have like different movesets or attacks. I guess you can power stance them, but then when you power stance them, basically every single weapon again has the exact same moves. I wish they would have done a little bit more when it comes to the actual unique weapons, because right now it's about 95% of the weapons do the exact same thing, have the exact same moves, and then there's a couple of unique weapons with some unique attacks. Hopefully if we get a DLC for this game, I would love to see more unique weapons rather than more weapons added to the same categories with the exact same movesets. But there's a ton of them, so if you want one with spikes, or one that has teeth, or one that just is a normal sword, you got all the variety. Jumping back to the pros, we're going to be kind of going back and forth a little bit. The level design is fantastic in this game. I love how a lot of the areas connect, maybe really reminiscent to like a Dark Souls 1. For example, there's an area really early on, pretty much right around the area for the first boss, that has a door. And I really had no idea when I was going to reach that door. I kept coming back to it, seeing if there was anything new. And it wasn't until pretty much the last third of the game that we ended up finally going into this door that loops all the way around to an endgame area. I love little stuff like that. Like, I love getting lost and then discovering some random door that leads you to a beginning area that feels familiar. It kind of makes you realize that like the whole map is kind of connected to each other. And in a way, you could probably just straight up run the same way you do in Dark Souls 1 from one area, run all the way to the end game area. Not a lot of teleporting that needs to happen. While I feel like you have obviously less options in this game, it's more linear. There isn't like a straight up area like the catacombs where you're just going to be able to instantly go and get yourself into a very, very high level area. They lead you more along the lines of the areas you can go to in the beginning are going to match your level more consistently, which I think is good. I think that prevents it from a lot of people like complaining and instantly jumping into an area where they shouldn't be, but that might also be a con for some people. You know, I think some people do like going straight to some of the end game areas and getting themselves into some sticky situations. But for now, we'll leave it as a pro. But I do love the fact that once you start getting more comfortable with the umbral lamp, you do start trying to check every single corner with the umbral lamp, because you start realizing that there's tons of secrets hidden everywhere. I love that as a little design for levels. I found so many just like straight up little hidden nooks that I go in there and have a couple of beryllium shards, maybe even a secret little weapon, a secret little enemy or a boss. And even then, I know I didn't discover every single thing in this game, because like I said, there's hundreds of random items when it comes to both weapons and armors to discover, and spells, tons and tons of spells. But the areas are designed really, really well. And when it comes to the mixing of the umbral world, it's something that I really haven't seen in many video games in general, not even just Souls-likes. But another con is that while you're going through this area, the enemy density is ridiculous in some of the areas. Now, I'm talking about more towards the end game. Now, let's put it this way. It was so bad that they straight up had to patch multiple times and have had to patch it multiple times because there were so many people that were complaining. Now, early game to mid game, I didn't really understand it too much. You know, a lot of people were complaining. And in my head, I was like, how far are these people? Like, I played this game for a goddamn living. I'm playing like 3-4 hours a day. How far are these people getting? You know, how quick are they beating this damn game? And it wasn't really till I got to some of the end game areas that I realized, like, oh, they're right. Because it gets crowded sometimes, man. And this is only in the regular world. Let's not even mix in the umbral world into this, because obviously when you're in the umbral world, you have a mixture of the regular enemies and the umbral enemies. There's a consistent spawning of some little umbral hollows that you can call them, I guess. The longer, of course, you're in the umbral, the scarier the things are that spawn, and the more things that do spawn. But it is just a pain in the ass. One of the most annoying things that I had consistently happen in this game was going through an entire area, killing basically every single enemy. And like I said, there's tons of them, and then dying. And then after that, you're just like, you know what, I'm going to run through all of this. And that happened fairly often in this game, especially towards the end of the game. Nobody likes killing 70 enemies and then dying right at the end and then having to do it all over again. They're not going to do it. People are just going to run through everything. But back to more pros. We have mimics in this game. And I love the mimics in this game. Now, don't get me wrong, very early on before I even realized how to get rid of them, they were pretty annoying. But once you finally discover the fact that, you know, they kind of glow a little bit different and they kind of have a little bit of a different sway to them, they look a little bit bigger when it comes to the item glow, you could use your little lamp to suck them, or whatever it is it does to them. I'm not sure. I don't know if you want to use those specific words. But once I realized a little way to get rid of them, it was really fun to actually run around and kind of have a second little look, give it that second glance, just to make sure it didn't sway in the wind the opposite way, and then grabbing it, of course. And then you realize you made the wrong choice. Whoa! What the fuck is that? So that's why I also put it in the cons. Because nothing feels worse than getting grabbed by one of those goddamn mimics. But the mimics do look really damn cool, along with a lot of the other enemies, which is a giant pro for me. The enemy designs are quite varied, and like I said, I guess they kind of had to have them varied, because you have Umbro enemies, and then you have actual regular world enemies. So many of them look and were designed really damn well, and tend to usually have different type of moves, so it doesn't really feel like you're fighting the same 4 enemies over and over. This game does the Dark Souls thing a lot, where you'll find an enemy that's a boss or a mini boss, and then later on they'll just straight up be all over the world. That got a little annoying because sometimes you just run into a room that has like 3 terrifying enemies. But I guess that's the challenge, right? That's the challenge, cleaving your way through those guys once you're finally really strong. The only enemies that I kind of feel were a little too prominent were probably the Umbro Hollows. Because, like I said, they just spawn infinitely, right? So sometimes they'll just straight up be like 10 of them chasing you. And while they take like 2 or 3 hits to kill, so they're not really too bothersome, it's especially annoying when you have 10 different like little Umbro Hollows, and then behind them is one of those terrifying fairies that takes 70 hits to kill. I do hate those Umbro Hollows, all 4 billion of those little bastards. Another pro that I want to get into is that magic is actually pretty damn awesome in this game. I found myself kind of relying a lot on magic because not only does it look cool, but it's actually pretty damn good. For the first run, I went Pyromancer. Girlfriend Valentine went Radiance. I know a lot of people while I was streaming were doing Umbro builds, and the consensus was that they were all pretty damn good, which is rare that there's not one very dominant magic group. It kind of feels pretty consistent all the way through. In fact, I would love to hear what you guys went with when it comes to the actual magic. And what was your favorite spell along with that type of magic? Because I did go Inferno, and the hammer, the fire hammer that I had, was probably my favorite spell. The amount that I used that thing is insane because it's so good. It was doing so much freaking damage to a lot of enemies. I was able to clear out like 30 of them goddamn Umbro Hollows. It was so much freaking fun, man. Now, of course, there were a few spells that were pretty damn OP. And while I would say that Radiance is probably a little bit stronger than Umbro or Inferno, it's not by much, and pretty much all 3 of them have something that will be very, very good. I would definitely say that the best choice when it comes to this game would be a nice mix of weapons plus magic. It was just the most fun, in my opinion. Now, the next one is kind of a mix of things, right? So I want to start off by calling a pro out, which would be PvP. At its core is fun. I think essentially when you're in there and you're actually fighting, and the weapons and the spells, it all feels good at its core. But unfortunately, I think PvP all has to go into a con. And multiplayer in general, in my opinion. Now, that is now, and not, 2 years down the line from now. November 14th, 2023, when I'm recording this, PvP and multiplayer is all basically a con. And it's just frustrating because it has potential to be fun and good and entertaining. But the servers and the connection in the game, the netcode itself, is the worst I have ever seen for like a big AAA like multiplayer. You know, it is just horrendous. I've never seen so much rubber banding and like hits that hit and then they teleport 40 feet away, or you see them a mile away swinging their weapon but somehow it's hitting you. It is just awful. Not only is the netcode like awful, but then you have some builds that are just completely broken, then mix terribly with the bad broken netcode that just result in you just getting obliterated, 2-shot, 1-shot, running into some overlevel that you do 30 damage to, and then he 1-shot or 2-shots you with the double lightsaber builds. And there's pretty much nothing you can do about it. Now, of course, there's always lag in Souls games. I know a lot of people are going to say that, but I feel like even in like a Dark Souls 3, you can still fight back against some lag. In this game, there's almost no fighting back unless you happen to hit somebody with a lucky OP spell, like I was when it came to the PvP and using the Inferno Hammer build. I was hitting some of these people with those, seeing them die, and then all of a sudden they teleport and they're alive and they're hitting me in the back. You know, like, it's just insanity. I don't know where that netcode went wrong. I truly hope it does get fixed, and please have it get fixed while there's still people to invade. I hope it happens, and I would gladly put all of this in the pros. But for now, PvP and multiplayer will stay in the cons, unfortunately. But if we want to go back to the pros, the PvE side of it is just beautiful. I had so much fun with the PvE in this game. The bosses are a giant pro, in my opinion. I think a lot of them are designed beautifully, while some of them are kind of basic and will fall under the whole, this is a 2 or 3 hit combo and then I do a spin and then you could hit them in that time, you know, like very simplistic moveset. Some of them do become pretty damn unique, like having clones of themselves that do separate attacks, then they copy those attacks, or they do separate attacks on their own while the main boss is doing something different, similar to like Pontiff. Some of them have little hidden secrets on how to deal with them when it comes to the Umbral. That happens quite consistently, which I'm so happy they mixed in the Umbral with some of the bosses like that, because naturally with a lot of the bosses you're gonna die, go into the Umbral, then you notice a bunch of Gwamples everywhere and you go, what the hell are these doing here? And then you use them and a giant spike comes out. Now this is one example that I'm giving here for one of the bosses. While that specific thing wasn't really worth doing most of the time, it gave you a different option. But that's just when it comes to the actual moveset. A lot of these bosses also look really damn cool. This game for sure has some of the most badass boss designs for any Souls-like that I've seen so far, and I'm so happy because obviously it's one of the most important things. But a lot of people could put it into the con list as well, where they did a lot of the similar thing where they'll have a boss and then that boss, like, you know, a couple hours later will end up being a regular enemy. They do that about 5 or 6 times in this game, which is fine. I guess you could consider them more mini bosses than proper big main bosses. But the monster designs and the big monster designed bosses were really cool. Not a big fan of the humanoid type of bosses. I feel like those weren't done super well. But luckily there's not too many of them anyways, so I would definitely give the design of the bosses, first when it comes to the moves that they do and the actual way they look, a big pro in this game. But I had fun overall with the game. Obviously I got the Radiance ending, being the Infernal build. And there are multiple endings, basically one for every single category if you want to do an Umbral or an Infernal or a Radiant ending. Now I'm not going to go into very specifics when it comes to actual spoilers for the game, but one thing I will say is I can't speak for the other endings, only for my own personal Radiant ending, because I haven't really seen any of the other ones. I want to kind of do it myself. The Radiance ending is kind of a bummer. And I will say that the final boss of that Radiance ending is just so anticlimactic. Not going to spoil who or what it is, but if you do that ending, or you did do that ending, you know exactly what the hell I'm talking about. It's just such an odd finale, and it is the one that most people, I think, are going to get, because if you don't know about how to not mess it up, you're instantly going to walk into the boss and instantly light that first beacon. All I'll say is don't instantly light that first beacon like an idiot like me. You saw press X and you go, okay, and then pressed it, because that's what I did. Don't do that. Do a little bit of research if you want to kind of see which ending you want to go for. I think it's totally okay to do that in a game like this that has something that so quickly it can turn and you're instantly locked out of an ending. I would very much suggest you guys do that for your own playthroughs, but there's multiple of them. While I feel the ending I got wasn't great, I've heard the other ones are better. We are going to be trying to go for the other ones in New Game Plus as well. But overall, the game was fantastic, in my opinion. It was super fun. It was the right amount of challenging, not counting the 70 trillion enemies that chase you around the world, especially when you're in Umbral and you have 25,000 souls and you don't want to lose them, so you're running around everywhere trying your best to survive. But the game is fun, weapons are fun, boss designs are cool, great level design. While the multiplayer and the PvP needs tons of work, they give you a lot of great things that you can kind of go for. The Covenant items are such a giant pro for me, but again, it's almost like it has to be put in the cons, because the Covenant items are so hard to get, because, you know, not only do you consistently lag out of invasions and it'll say that it just kicked you out, couldn't connect or something like that. Once you finally get in there, that straight up surviving is a task of its own. Good luck actually killing people sometimes, especially when they're geared up and maybe have an OP freaking over leveled next to them with a Radiant's double lightsaber build. Like, it was so bad when it comes to the netcode that like places like Australia straight up were getting, and do get, I think, like 100 Covenant items compared to like the 9 that we get on the regular US servers. Like, some people in my chat were coming in like, why are you getting 9 or 27 when you use the specific finger item so you can get more, even though that doesn't work half the time? People are like, why are you getting 9? Don't you just get like 100? And it's like, no, you get 100 because your servers are 10 times worse than mine somehow. Like, I don't even want to know what those freaking matches look like. If the way my matches, it looks like I'm Luffy going into Gear 5, rubber banding all over the goddamn place. But it's cool to have this thing to grind for. I love the fact that we have tons of PvP armor, and it lets me consistently do it. It's unfortunate that it's real laggy, but overall it's still fun to have something to grind for, and gives me more content to do. But overall, I would honestly say that the game is an 8 out of 10. I could see it jumping into a 9, 100% if they fix the multiplayer servers, or the netcode, whatever it is that's kind of fucking up the multiplayer. And I could definitely see them doing that, because they are doing such a great job when it comes to updating this game consistently. And it seems like it's going to be a continuing trend. We just got a giant roadmap that shows what we're going to be getting when it comes to, you know, New Game Plus changes. You know, something like maybe even new game types for New Game Plus. New weapons, new spells, new movesets for some of those weapons, new little missions, new armor sets, all free. A lot of cool new things. And then hopefully down the line, we get a nice little paid DLC. I would love to see that for this game. But that is it. My sort of impromptu review for Lords of the Fallen, since I know a lot of people still ask me every single time that I play this game, like, is it good? Is it good? It's the most consistent question. I'll get it 20 times in a single stream whenever I play this thing. And my answer to that is yes, it is pretty nice. I like it. Now, I'll also preface it by saying that I am talking about the PC version, because I've heard some stories about the console versions, and I haven't experienced them myself, so you guys can tell me more about that. But for the PC version, I enjoyed it. But thank you guys so much for watching. If you made it this far, maybe a little like. That'd be nice. It really helps out the channel. Helps out the video. Thank you so much for watching. Remember to subscribe, and you know what? Share the video if you want to give my review to somebody for this game. Have a good one, everybody. See you all in the next one. Thank you again for watching. Bye-bye.